Let's focus on a couple of other themes then. EMS, that's the important theme out there. And some of these stocks have seen some selling pressure. This after Tata Electronics has got the CCI clearance to acquire majority stake in Pegatron India. What does this mean in terms of competition? Will the intensity go up? Well, we're joined by Mr. Jairam Sampath, the Director and CFO at Kaynes Technology India. Hi, Mr. Sampath. Good morning. Thanks a lot for joining in. Wishing you, as well as your team, all the best for 2025. The theme in terms of EMS is sounding very, very interesting. However, the markets are a little bit nervous that there could be additional competition coming in there with the entry of the Tatas. What is your take? Do you believe that the pie is big enough for everyone to get into, or do you believe that this will pose some bit of a challenge?
Anyway, good morning and thank you for having me on the show. Fundamentally, anybody interested in the industry and putting up new ventures is a positive sign for the industry. So market and the pie was already large enough. It was just that the foreign players were taking a huge share out of this, and then Indian domestic players were probably not participating. So now that trend has kind of reversed, and you have a lot of people in India trying to partake from the import substitution, let's say, trend. And so it's a good thing. Also, in a marketplace, you need to have many players, especially world-class players are always welcome, so that India as a destination for manufacturing gets recognized. And that's very important because there are only small differences between companies across the world in terms of their abilities. So it's the attention that makes a lot of difference in terms of making you kind of ready for attention from the OEMs and so on, and the RFQs. So nobody does a complete census survey of market before they award contracts. So they go by a top level understanding, and then they shortlist a few players and so on. So it's very good news that there's continued interest for investments into India across the various sectors.
All right, Mr. Sampath, so just clear the air. You're saying a new entrant actually could be healthy for the industry, and you don't believe it's a risk because the pie is big enough. Are we getting that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. So that we take that on board. But there could be an element of pricing pressure, more amount of players. If you have a client, they may want to go to another one. Could that be a possibility, or do you think that pricing power exists for the industry?
Yeah, so pricing pressure, pricing is a function of demand versus supply. So the margin pressures, as people imagine, will be higher if the supply is plentiful and demand is less. But in case of India, it's the other way around, especially supply of indigenously manufactured electronics pretty low compared to the demand. And so also in the newer areas of electronics, like semiconductor, advanced assemblies, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of areas where demand exceeds the supply. There could be government projects and so on. So in such cases, the margin pressures generally don't make themselves visible. So margin pressures have not much to do with the number of players. It has something to do with the nature of the industry.
Mr. Sampath, hi, good morning. Great to have you on the show today. So I just want to talk about now, as an industry, what do you need additionally from the government? We've already seen PLI schemes for mobile phones, for IT hardware. There's a lot of expectation. Our colleagues have also been reporting that this new 25,000 crore rupees PLI scheme for electronics components, I mean, that would be there. It'll cover things like maybe printed circuit boards and maybe camera modules, so on and so forth. How successful have the PLI schemes been so far, and what further tweaks would you want? What would you want to hear in the budget and beyond that can really make the Indian EMS industry fully competitive and make it fully realize its potential?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. See, firstly, the thing that's required is government must follow through its plan of doing localization of imports. And that, to my mind, government doesn't have to spend too much money. They just have to nudge the OEMs, the global players who are selling into India, to look at India as a base for manufacturing. So it could be varying levels of, let's say, value addition, but that probably will do the trick faster than any other PLI. In terms of PLI and other schemes, I think they are good to begin with. Maybe a first few years of industry setup, they kind of take the edge off the margin pressures. But then eventually, government must make sure that it encourages companies to invest into newer technologies, and it must follow through its plan for what is known as Atmanirbhar Bharat, and especially the emerging areas such as electronics and high-tech manufacturing.
No, so on PLI, I mean, just give us your experience from Kaynes' perspective. How much have you benefited from the existing schemes and the contours of the new scheme that's being now discussed? 25,000 crores of a PLI scheme for, like I said, for PCBs, for some sort of, other system assemblies, for camera modules. Does this sound good enough? And what about the thresholds? Like you said, the thresholds for localization, maybe they'll be increased. So, how will all of this play out?
Yeah, in certain, let's say, component categories like PC board, I think it is very helpful because we have a very minuscule market share compared to the global players like China. So it will definitely help to move a lot of production into India. And so, like I said, PLI schemes in the beginning stage, especially in these kind of components like PC board and other components, they'll be greatly helping in establishing manufacturing facilities in India. So I think it's a good thing that government is thinking in this direction. And these are essentially, I say, positive moves. Instead of putting just tariff barriers, I think they are going one step further, and then they're saying that if you make in India, you get some little bit of benefit. Our experience has been that the PLI, especially in the industrial production, it does not account for a huge amount of, let's say, influencing factor, because PLI schemes, by and large, are visible. And so, while they make the total cost of electronics production in India lower, but they may not specifically benefit one company or the other. So from that perspective, they are more a systemic, let's say, dose of medicine. What I think is even more powerful is to move the demand into Indian, let's say, Indian companies. So by various means, by using the Atmanirbhar Bharat plank, so that will probably do this entire thing far superior, because there are lots of areas where government is a large buyer and also a large influencer. And also, I think we must project positively the future demand potential within India for both consumer as well as non-consumer areas. Our non-consumer areas like industrial and other areas, also penetration of electronics is quite low. So we are actually just in the beginning stage of this entire revolution. As I say, of course, there's always a lull before a storm. So what you see today, as sometimes, there is a bit of a lull because of elections and stuff like that. But let's not get fooled. I think we are in for a very aggressive growth in this particular area. Because that we see from the kind of RFQs that you get and kind of footfalls and the percentage of occupation of our conference halls and so on.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Sampath, we're running a little short on time, but since you mentioned PLI and the government support and the way forward, and you're not shying away from the fact that there's a tremendous runway for companies like yours. But I need to ask you on this PLI aspect. You have Dixon, Foxconn. In the last week or so, we've been hearing about them coaxing the government to please clear their PLI dues. With regard to your company, what is it at? What is the total PLI dues? When do you have to receive it? And have you received what you'll have asked for till now?
Yeah, so we have very small portion, less than maybe about 7-8% of our business wherein PLI is applicable. So from that perspective, it does not hurt us. But I do notice that if you compare the incentive payouts today compared to, let's say, 4 or 5 years ago, it's much faster. But then obviously, if some industry players are coming out and saying, please do pay fast, I think that also reflective of the fact that in their total profits, PLI is in significant proportion. So I think government can definitely do it faster and set up mechanisms to more upfront these incentives so that the benefit is not lost. So whatever incentives are given much later do not spur the demand as much as if it is given on time. Because if it's given on time, it gets reinvested into the business. If it's given very late, it goes into some buckets, So I think the players are asking rightfully to give this so that they can maintain their profitability and then positive outlook.
Got it. But Mr. Sampath, but have you received what you have asked for till now, or is there a delay?
Yeah, see, so far the movements have not been bad. We have just in IT products, which is the servers, etc., and then also in some white goods electronics. And it's a very small amounts, and so we are receiving. It's not that we are not receiving. Even in the new projects where there is capital subsidy, there's a fair bit of say transparency and movement of files, etc. So we don't see any major issue here, but maybe it's also reflecting the fact that how important PLI is for certain companies. So obviously their let's say levels of anxiety will be higher than companies like us.
Okay, all right, Mr. Sampath, we appreciate you joining in, giving us an industry view out there. You're seeing this tremendous growth, new player coming in there, so there's big potential. And with regard to the PLI, you'll be happy to see the PLI payments coming on time for other players as well for the industry. What's promised should come on board. When we have you with regard, post your Q3 numbers, we'll get more details from you on your company. But thanks a lot for joining in.